And I want to thank you all again for being here. I am so excited to spend this time with you. This is such a timely conversation about growing your career while growing your family. And while we're all here tonight, I would love to hear from you in the chat and just start introducing yourself. Where are you joining us from tonight? And how old are your kids? I know sometimes we get people who don't have kids yet, or who are caregiving in a different capacity. So we'd love to just hear what is bringing you here tonight. How old are your kids? Where are you joining from? I'm so thrilled that you all could be here because this is a really important conversation when life has honestly just never been harder for us working parents. And so let's see, we have Jackie from St. Louis, Missouri, who has a 2-year-old. Rachel from Arlington, who's trying to have a kid. We have Chester from Texas, Shelly from Annapolis with a 10-month-old, Nilaya, and forgive me, Nilaya, please tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, in New Haven, who's expecting her first. We've got An in New York City, 2 kids, 3 and 10 months. Oh, I've been in that age difference. Angelica in DC with a 5-year-old. I have a 5-year-old in DC too. Brianna in Washington, 3.5 and almost 6. Joining because it's a new year and we're about to enter the 3rd pandemic year. Send help. Brianna, I'm here to help. No silver bullets, no crystal balls. That you should know from the get-go. Cassie from New York City. We've got Carly from San Francisco. Wow, so many people in here from every time zone in the United States of America. Shout out to all the people who are also going to be watching the recording of this. We got an email from someone as far away as Abu Dhabi who asked if this was going to be recorded because apparently it's the middle of the night there or it's just not a convenient time. So Britt, just give me a thumbs up if my screen is sharing because I was busy looking at the chat. And I'm just like I said, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you all tonight because, elephant in the room is it's just really, 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 really hard out there. And it's so important to me that when we have this conversation, we keep it real with each other, and I'm going to keep it real with you because we all know that it has just felt like a total dumpster fire on some days. And I think the only thing that makes it harder to be a working parent in this pandemic than just all the factors around us is some of the toxic positivity out there. Last week, I can tell you that I personally went into a room, I closed the door, I had a cry, because it was another round of the COVID juggle, of the calendar reshuffle, of my childcare just evaporating in a moment. And I knew I could handle it. I knew I could get into problem solving mode, but I just needed a second to be with my feelings. And so we are going to have an action oriented conversation tonight, but I want to just be real that it's still hard. And I'm right there with you in the trenches. And so if you came here tonight and you were like, wow, I'm going to learn all the secrets of working mom life nirvana, this lady is some Zen guru, you are going to be so disappointed. If you have come here tonight because you want to have a real conversation about how we can really work on growing our careers, stay true to our goals, reprioritize, you have come to the right place. Because the truth is, we just are not in Kansas anymore. Brianna, you nailed it in the chat, right? Like, this is my 3rd year of pandemic parenting. Send help, right? And so I do not have a crystal ball where I can tell you what it's going to be, what the magic tricks are. In fact, I would argue, and I'd love to hear from you, a +1 in the chat. Going through the pandemic is the only thing I've observed in my life as a working mom that feels like it gets harder over time, right? Like when I first had my kids, it was overwhelming and then I got used to it. It got easier. When I had a second, it was overwhelming and then I got used to it. When I started new jobs or took this business full time, it was hard, it was overwhelming, and then I got used to it. But it feels like with COVID, the playbook is always shifting. Like it just feels hard. And so what I'm really hoping that we can do today is work on some tools, work on some things around our goal to help us design a playbook that we can take with us to stay agile. Because at this point, you've all read all the articles. We know these numbers, right? We have too many of us who are leaving, too many of us who are scaling back, too many of us who are taking ourselves out of pure survival, not our fault, off of that trajectory we had for our leadership, our goals, our earning potential, and adding insult to injury, we're feeling a lot of worry about shame, how we're going to be perceived. And so I want to take shame out of the equation, and I want to have a really shameless conversation about how we can think about our goals this year in our third year of pandemic parenting. And so let me properly introduce myself. I loved reading through the chat, everywhere from Boston to New York to Rhode Island to San Francisco to Seattle. This is so cool. This is what I love about virtual, is we actually get to all hang out in this room together. And so let me introduce you. I'm thrilled to spend this time with you. My name is Randy Braun. I am an executive coach and the founder and CEO of a women's leadership coaching and advisory firm called Something Major. That is a very formal way of saying that I just do this. I am so passionate about helping working moms and working women in demanding jobs live and lead their work lives on purpose. And I can't think of anything that is more foundational to that than our goals. And so tonight we are going to have a conversation about your goals, your life goals, your work goals, your mom goals, the things that are important to you. And if you're just joining us, feel free to throw your camera on. I would love to see your faces. And so I want to have a conversation about why it's hard for us to set our goals, how we can actually set our goals while we're here, and sharing some tactics that you can take with you, because I'm thrilled that you're here. But for my friends on the East Coast, I hope that when you leave here at 9:01, you have tools that you can really use to put this into practice. For my friends on the West Coast who still need to go through the rigmarole of putting your kids to sleep after this, even more so, I want you to leave with these tactics. So I think it's important that we talk about why it is so hard sometimes for us to set goals as working moms, even when we are total rock stars, because we can't empower ourselves to do it if we're not acknowledging or staying aware to some of the pitfalls that might be holding us back. Any ideas about this? You can throw it in the chat. You can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Brianna, did you just unmute yourself? No, sorry, that was my screen. Any ideas here? Why do you think it is so hard for us busy parents, us busy moms, to set goals even when we're total rock stars? So Lakeisha said fear of failure. Shelly says can't get out of problem-solving mode. Brianna is prioritizing our kids over us. I just like a +1 if any of this resonates with you. I think like I'm looking at this list and I certainly have experienced all of those things, right? Shelly says caught up in the business of the day. Hard to see the long-term view, says Carrie. Something will always throw me off, from Jackie in St. Louis. So here's the thing. Everyone's a winner tonight, right? And we're going to talk about all of these things. It's really important. I want to share with you 5 frameworks, 5 pitfalls that I see rock star working moms just totally fall into, either because they're not aware that they're doing it, or maybe like some of you are identifying in the chat, you see the problem, you just don't know the solution. And guess what? We can't talk about a solution if we don't talk about the problem. So the first is what I call being stuck on the moving walkway. And that's this really insidious career drift. So just throw me a +1 in the chat. Has anyone here ever used one of these walking walkways in an airport? Or maybe would love to hear from you. Let's play this game in the chat. Like, where, if you could get on an airplane tomorrow and you could ride one of these bad boys, where would you be heading to? I think for me, it would be Hawaii, as we think about this moving walkway. And so when we talk about getting stuck on the moving walkway, here's the thing, right? We've all ridden these moving walkways, and I'm reading the chat about where you all would go if you could be at the airport tomorrow on your dream trips. Maldives, Paris, Hawaii. Yeah, lots of +1s on all of those. Here's the issue with getting stuck on the moving walkway. It's so insidious, this drift that we have in our careers, especially as the pandemic has been going on. We're like, gosh, if I could just get through this project, this quarter, this recital, this school closure, this Omicron surge, then after that, for sure I'm going to focus on my goals, right? And because we're putting in these little benchmarks, these little signs along the way, we give ourselves the illusion that we're moving towards something, but we're not moving towards our goals. We're actually kicking the can down the road on setting that. And so I want to invite you, right? I'm looking back at the chat on our fantasy trips to the Maldives, to Hawaii, to Paris. In our work lives, I want to invite you to step off the moving walkway with me, right? You can still get there without riding the moving walkway. And I want to be thoughtful tonight. We're going to build some strategies about how we can take ourselves out of that career drift and have the agency, have the ability to change direction, have the ability to change course all on our own because we are not distracted by the illusion of moving forward. Any questions about this idea of the moving walkway and this idea of career drift before we keep going? All right, let's talk about number two. We're overwhelmed by the overwhelm itself, right? So how many of you can relate to this? It's like we're just, I think Shelly said this, getting through the business of the day. And it's that moment where we take the dog for the walk. We wash our hair in the shower. We're doing that midnight feed. And it's like we have a moment of quiet. And all the things that we could be thinking about our goals and our dreams and what comes next come rushing in. And it is so overwhelming that we say, you know what? I just can't handle this today. Being overwhelmed by the overwhelm itself is like saying you're going to go on a diet and going to McDonald's tonight because you swear up and down that you are going to start the diet tomorrow. Okay? I mean, nobody loves a McDonald's chocolate milkshake more than I do. But I want to think tonight about how we can think small. Dream big. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Dream big and act small, right? It's about thinking about small moves that we can take to actually make big strides without getting so caught up in that overwhelm. The third here is that we over-polish. Anyone want to come off mute and share what they think this means? Spoiler, I'm looking at you perfectionists when I talk about over-polishing. Anyone think they know what I mean when I say we get caught up over-polishing our goals? Nobody?
I can. I'll go ahead. Yeah. So I would probably say for me, over polishing is like I put this sunny picture on what it's going to be, and it's never what I want it to be. So I just keep trying to cover up more of it with something else, and it's just not going to be what I want.
Right. It's like we just keep polishing it until we get the result that we want, right? And we tell ourselves a story that we can't think about our goals until they are perfect and shiny. And in the process of doing that, that can look like, you know, making extensive lists, extensive 10-point plans, extensive research. Lots of long stories about what my teacher, Tara Moore, who wrote the book Playing Big, calls over-sequencing, where we get so caught up in developing these this before that stories about what it's going to be like with our goals that we never get a chance to actually work on experiencing them. And I want to share with you, it's amazing to work with our goals when they're half-baked, right? I mean, how many of you have baked cookies or baked bread with your children in this pandemic or by yourself to just get you through as an activity? I'm personally not the baker, but my husband makes a mean focaccia, so any Washingtonians are welcome to come over and break bread at my house. But I want to think about how we work with our goals when they're half-baked, right? When the dough can be kneaded, when the dough can be adjusted, when the recipe can be tweaked. And we're going to talk tonight about the power that we have when we talk about some of those tactics, some of those sanity-first tactics about achieving our goals, about how we can feel more comfortable working with our goals when they're half-baked instead of over-polished. Two more here. One is what we call identity foreclosure. Has anyone ever heard of this one? Maybe anyone who read Adam Grant's Think Again, which I highly recommend to put on your 2022 reading list, your 2022 reading list if you haven't read that yet. And this one totally blew my mind. Brittany knows this because I called her and I was like, we have got to talk about this identity foreclosure thing. And so it's something I've watched in my coaching practice for years. And I want to share with you a framework for how we can actually name it. So identity foreclosure is this idea that we get so attached to our current point of view that we literally foreclose on ourselves. We foreclose on there being any other options. And I want to just share this great quote that I love from Adam Grant about identity foreclosure. He explains, identity foreclosure can stop us from evolving. In some ways, identity foreclosure is the opposite of an identity crisis. Instead of accepting uncertainty about who we want to become, we develop a compensatory conviction and plunge head over heels into our career path. Who here has ever felt like this is the only way it can be? This is the only thing it's going to be. It's too late for me to change. I've done marketing for the last 10 years, and so there's no way I can not be a marketer. It's too late in my career for me to make a shift. These are stories that I see and hear all the time, and I just want to tell you it's simply not true. And I want you to feel empowered to know that identity foreclosure is not a you thing. It's a really, really high-performing individual thing, right? Because you recognize how much energy, how much conviction, how much networking you have put into a career path. And so tonight we're going to talk about how we can switch that. And then finally, we don't stop to untangle. So as you know, if you've ever worked with yarn or rope or anything like that, maybe even a necklace that just gets knotted up, when things are all tangled up, they are practically useless. And where I see brilliant women get tangled up on their goals too often is we start to think about, okay, well, like maybe I could think about this career shift. But actually I have all these financial responsibilities to my household, and we're thinking about having another kid, or my kid is going to a new school, or my kid has special needs. And so, you know what, actually I have all of these family and professional and personal goals and obligations that just aren't going to make this possible. And what happens is we start to negotiate against ourselves because we're trying to build from a tangled mess of yarn. And so I want to encourage you to think about, how can we untangle the threads of what do I want in my personal life? What do I want in my professional life? What do I want in my financial life? And for those of you who joined my New Year's Eve goal setting celebration, spoiler, we talked a little bit about this. It actually comes from this workshop, and we're going to dig even deeper into it. So I would love to hear from you. Which one of these is your personal goal setting kryptonite? I would love to just see the number in the chat. For me, I'm all about number 3. I am a compulsive, or I should say recovering compulsive over polisher. If it's not perfect, it's really hard for me to move forward. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat, right? You clearly came here tonight because you're thinking about your goals. Which one of these is like, yeah, when I think about my goals, I really get stuck on number, let's see, we have a mix. Christine says she doesn't stop to untangle. Nelia says she's an over polisher. Lakesia also number 3, over polisher. Anyone else? And while we wait for these to come in, anyone have questions about these? If you come to a Something Major workshop before, you've heard me probably say this, especially if I've come to your organization. You probably know I have some pretty silly slides about this. I always say everything that we do here at Something Major, it's not a prescription, it's a buffet. And so I know I've done my job. If everyone here, yes, I see at least one person smiling who has watched me put these slides up inside their big fancy organization where I show a big picture of a buffet, right? I know that I'm doing my job. If we are creating an environment where everyone can take the thing that works for them. This isn't a prescription. So I see, okay, lots of number 2s. I'm overwhelmed by the overwhelm itself. Number 3, over polishing. Number 4, identity foreclosure. The chats are coming in, more for over polishing. And so I want to talk about our goals. And once we understand what some of the barriers are to our goals, it's a lot easier for us to think about how we can bypass them, right? Because when we have an obstacle, there are 2 ways that we can handle it. We can either confront it head on, or we can simply bypass it, right? It's to say, like, I know I'm going to over polish, but I'm going to just forge along anyway. Or I know I'm an over polishing perfectionist. I'm going to work really hard on my perfectionism. Both are okay. And I want to give us a space tonight to jump into the work and make this less of a conceptual conversation and more of an environment for you to think about what it is that you really want. And you don't have to answer this question to me. You don't have to put it in the chat. You don't have to put it on paper. But I would love for you to just think for a second, what do I really want? And the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to just check in and see how that felt. Was it thrilling? Was it overwhelming? Do you feel totally numb? Did your armpits get sweaty? Did your chest get tight? Like, what was the somatic reaction about that? Because as working moms, we rarely, rarely stop to ask, what do I want? We are so good at taking care of our families, right? 86% of us say that we carry more mental load. I frankly can't believe that that number isn't higher. We are so good at taking care of things at work. And for this time together, I want you to think about what it is that you really want, because I know you want something or you wouldn't have shown up tonight. And I don't want us to get tangled. I want us to take apart those threads. I want us to give ourselves permission to go really small on this. And so, can I just see a +1 from everyone in the chat? Did everyone here get my note today about bringing a pen and paper? Do you have a pad of paper and a pen? Yes? Head nods. Yes. If you didn't get the memo, no stress. You can go grab one. You can create a OneNote or an Evernote, but I'm a really big advocate on writing things by hand. There is actual research that shows that writing things down by hand not just makes us more accountable to the things that we write down, but it actually makes it stick in our brain more. And so I want to go and really start to help you think about what it is you really want. I know we have at least one person who came to New Year's. Like I said, spoiler, some of the work we did there was actually adapted from this workshop, because we've been doing this workshop for years and we know this really works. So if you did this exercise with me on New Year's, this is such an exciting opportunity to either see what comes up that's new, maybe pulling up that list and re-examining it. If you're like, I did not spend New Year's Eve with you. I was with my family. Maybe you were Brittany and you were skiing or on some great vacation, and you're like, I have no idea what this woman's talking about. We're going to walk through it right now. I want you to take your piece of paper and, just like you see on the screen, to go ahead and just draw those lines down the middle. We're going to draw 4 quadrants. Because I don't know about you, but when I think about what it is I really want, it gets really, really overwhelming for me. And so I want to give ourselves permission to take it slow. And I want you in one of those corners to just jot down professional, to jot down family in another one, financial, and personal. Those are the 4 areas of our life that we are going to think about through this exercise. Because guess what? What we want professionally and what we want financially are intertwined, but we actually go further when we segment them out. Or what we want in our family life, maybe you want to spend more time with your kids. Maybe you want to spend less time with your kids. No judgment on that. Is related to what we want in our personal lives, but we also have some personal goals for ourselves. And so I want to invite you now to just do a little bit of jotting and journaling. What do you really want in each of these categories? It can be big, it can be small. So it could be as small as, like, I'll give you one of my personal goals for the year, which is I really want to take tennis lessons. That's a really small goal. I'll give you a financial goal that I have for this year that's a lot bigger and scarier for me. I want to get more fluent in reading the financial statements that come out of my business, right? So they can be as big or as small. Maybe you want to have a kid this year. Maybe you want to get a promotion. Maybe you want to get a new job. Maybe you want to advocate for something really big for the people on your team. We're just going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to be here if you have any questions. We're just going to give you a few moments to just journal and reflect on that. just for those of you who are in the flow, keep flowing. For those of you who might feel stuck, just consider which of these categories came really easily to you, and feel free to just jump into those. And if you're feeling like stuck around one of these categories, just give yourself permission to get curious about what would be possible. What would be fabulous if it happened versus a problem that you need to fix? So giving yourself that permission. And I'm going to give you a few more minutes to jot, because let's be honest, when do we ever get enough time to really sit and think about what it is that we want? Take a few more minutes. Even if you think you have captured it all, I invite you to keep writing, just keep the pen moving, and I think you'll surprise yourself with what you come up with. I would love to hear from you in the chat. Done if you're done, a minute if you need a minute. Gosh, I miss being in a room together where I can just look around and truly take the temperature. But thank God for technology in that chat. So if you're done, we'd love to hear from you. Done? Head nods. Once I get enough done, then I know that we have a critical mass. Maybe just a few more moments. If you're really in the flow and we're moving on and you're with your goals, by all means, please keep going, and you can catch up with us. So let's talk about your goals. Anyone want to share something that they came up with? You can raise your hand or ask Brittany to unmute, or
I can share if you want to.
Oh, sure.
I have a professional goal around there's probably 2, maybe 3 employees on my team that I want to move them to what's next with grace and with kindness. So that's a pretty clear goal that I have to achieve in the next, I'm aiming for that in 6 months.
Cool. So what is so important to you about this goal, Brianna?
What's so important to me about this goal is the how it's done, the grace and kindness component, because I want them to know that I'm in support of what their goals are. And I feel like if I have the clarity that I can't offer that on my current team, then I owe it to them to help them get there. It does a disservice if they are not happy or not set up for success on mine.
So when you think about, those 5 pitfalls that we sometimes fall into that keep us at distance from our goals, right? There was over polishing, there was overwhelmed by the overwhelm itself, there was being stuck on the moving walkway, identity foreclosure, getting tangled. Do any of those come into play here, keeping you from achieving that goal?
The moving walkway, probably, because there will be pain and it'll be harder if they're gone and there's a lag of time in which I can rehire and evaluate for what I really need. So that one definitely resonates for this.
Yeah. So you're just kind of like stuck, right? Like drifting through on a process that you don't feel like you have full agency over.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear, Brianna, I want to keep workshopping this, and I just want to pause to throw this out to the chat and to the group that's here. Look at your goals for a moment, and how many of you have a goal on here where you're having that moving walkway moment where you're like, just throw me a +1 if this is you, where it's like, I would love to do this, and I can't seem to get off the moving walkway of feeling like I'm drifting and there's a part of this that's taking me, you know, that appears like I'm moving forward, but actually it's not really in my control. So if you see a goal on your goal sheet where you're like with Brianna, like, oh, I kind of feel like I'm stuck on the moving walkway with this one, would love to just hear from you in the chat. Brianna, I want to throw this back over to you. So if you could think about the smallest thing that you could say yes to this week to support that goal, what is the smallest thing you could say yes to that's in your control that would take you off the moving walkway?
The smallest thing I could say yes to take me off that walkway is probably to review, to maybe get a new tool in my tool belt for how to have some of these conversations. And I can look to my organization or my, the company at large for maybe some career framing guidelines. So it doesn't feel like I'm starting with nothing.
Yeah. And you're hitting on something that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, which is our goals as a contact sport. So I'm a huge believer that putting our goals in contact with other people around us who can give us insight, advice, and feedback is huge. So if you were to look at that network that you have inside your organization, feel free to give us initials or a first name if you have concerns about confidentiality. Who is one person that you could tap into in your network to help support this yes?
One of my role models who's a phenomenal manager. Okay. So her name is Stephanie.
Okay, Stephanie. So phenomenal Stephanie. So will you also say, so you will say yes to reaching out to phenomenal Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Can we all throw Brianna some love in the chat, because it's very brave to talk about your goals on a Zoom call with complete strangers who are joining from all around the country. Brianna, thank you. And we should all be so lucky to work for managers like Brianna who are coming to a conversation about growing their career, growing their family, and are talking about developing the people on their team. Anybody else have a goal that they are feeling brave about workshopping or curious about workshopping, or like you really struggled with this exercise and you need some help? Brianna, as we wait for that, I'm just seeing all the love in the chat for you. Lots of great emoji use, everybody.
Don't hate me, Randy, because I know it's recorded, but it's Brianna, not Brianna.
Oh my God, it's my New York accent.
I know.
And that's embarrassing because I've known Brianna for a really long time. So thank you. Thank you, my friend. Okay. Who else?
I'll go ahead and step up.
Sure.
So I'm starting in a new role in a completely different industry than what I'm used to.
Congrats.
And thanks. I'm walking onto a team that does some phenomenal work. But I'm definitely that person that takes some time to say, okay, what's the strategy and the reasoning behind what we're doing? Let's plan so that, as we move forward, we have a really good idea of why we're doing what we're doing. I think they do great work, but I know that sometimes they get an idea, they all kind of ideate together, and then they're like, okay, let's go. And I'm all about that, but I'm also about, okay, so we have these ideas, which ones make the most sense, as opposed to let's just move. So I'm one of maybe two on our team that are very much like, okay, we need to slow down because we're actually making more work for ourselves, because we're having to redo things we've already done because we didn't think through that stuff. So I think my goal was to help my team to focus on strategy and planning versus plunging forward to make more work for ourselves. So I'm really kind of thinking to myself, how can I even like start that, especially as a newbie to the team, and how do I kind of get the, I'd say like the ganas to do that for me. Like,
yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on your new role. Again, if we could please just throw Jackie some love in the chat and congratulate her on her new role. That is so, so, so exciting. And I am so thrilled that you're here to talk about this. So Jackie, right, we have a goal. I'm hearing the apprehension. I'm hearing the hesitation. Like, this is a little hard. So let's go back to those empowering ourselves past those 5 pitfalls, right? We had number 1 was we're stuck on the moving walkway. Number 2 is overwhelmed by the overwhelm itself. Number 3 was over polishing. Number 4 was identity foreclosure. And number 5 was it's all tangled up. Which one of these feels like the barrier to that goal?
I think it's the moving walkway again on this one.
Okay.
There are things that have been, I think, in progress before I was there. And understanding like, how do I work within these dynamics to create, I mean, it's a culture shift. It's a complete culture change for them and how they work. And understanding like there's going to be limitations to what I can do. So the over polisher in me is also like, you can't make it perfect. Like a small step is a good step, right? So I'm trying to tell myself that too. So
yeah, well, it's funny because like nothing in life is ever truly like mutually exclusive, right? It sounds like your over polishing is what's keeping you on the moving walkway, right? Like if you're ever in a big airport, like you can get off the moving walkway every 3 gates or 5 gates. And Jackie, it sounds like your perfectionism is like, well, I better get on the moving walkway until I find the perfect path to take me off the moving walkway the next time that it opens up. So, okay, if we could give ourselves permission to let it be messy, right? This is totally hypothetical. There are no consequences. And you could just truly let it be messy instead of perfect. What's one thing you might feel curious about experimenting with?
I think this is also another goal, is just being more assertive and maybe stating like, okay, here's an idea. Maybe I could take X amount of time to just kind of marinate on this and think through something, or just own a project that I own and show how it could be done and give that as, you know, here's proof in the pudding, hopefully.
So speaking of proof in the pudding, speaking of perfectionism, you need to come to all of our February sessions on inner critic and bragging better. Sidebar on that, if we were, Jackie, to design hypothetically a yes and a no around this, right? Like again, this is experimental. Experimental. If you were to say, okay, right, I'm gonna just maybe take on a project that's mine, show them how it's done, proof is in the pudding. What is something that you could potentially give yourself permission to say yes to, and one thing you might give yourself permission to say no to, or at least feel curious about exploring?
I think like one good way for me to grow too might be finding a way in which I could work with someone else on a project they have. And instead of like trying to set the stage for everything, simply working with them to find a way that maybe works for both. So that could be a way to say yes without trying to take over. I promise I don't. I usually apologize more than I help sometimes.
Yeah, we got to stop that.
Yeah. And I would probably say no to the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect. My main goal is simply just, I hate duplicating efforts. Like if we don't have to do this 5 times, I don't want to do it 5 times. So that's my struggle. Like, and I think that's the mom, like, if we don't have to do this 20 times, I just want to do it once and just like move on with my life. Like, let's
right.
Let's just do this one.
100%. Right. So it's just to bottom line it. It's saying yes to finding a collaboration, and it's saying no to the perfectionism. What's the next action step from here?
So I do have some projects I'm working with people on. I'm finding ways to have like more meaningful conversations on how we can kind of, how do we prioritize one thing over another just simply trying to get them to kind of think about that and think about that myself when there's a time for us to step back and like, we don't need to slow this thing down. This can't move forward. And sometimes just saying like 80% is good enough right now. Like, it's okay. So I've been doing that.
Who else could live with 80% is good enough right now? I feel like that would be so freeing. I've had like 17 moments today where 80% would have been phenomenal. A +1 if you feel that. And let's also throw Jackie some love in the chat again. Jackie, congrats on your new role. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we can't get to everyone. I would love to hear from you just in the chat, just like a quick sentence, a bullet point. What is one goal? Again, we're not going to have a chance to workshop many more of these, but what is one goal that you came up with? Is it a professional goal like Brianna and Jackie? Is it a personal goal? Is it a financial goal? You know, is it a family goal? And if you don't feel comfortable putting your goal in the chat, just throw us the category. It's really powerful to write our goals down. It's even more powerful to share them with other people. So I would love to hear from you. What are some of your goals that you came up with? Just share one. If you're feeling hesitant, maybe the one that feels the scariest. Balancing my role versus my coworkers. Cool. Nobody else has goals? I saw hands writing. I want to empower you. You don't have to put it in the chat if you don't want to. I want to empower you to own your goals, to share them. And we're going to talk about, with the time we have left, just a few quick tips for making the moves that matter when you are an insanely busy working parent. Because Jackie has big goals. Brianna has big goals. Everyone here has big goals. And your career and family goals are like the Super Bowl of your life. And so I want us to make a game plan, have a few plays that we can run down the field so that we can feel more empowered to accomplish our goals, or at least give our best effort. And the first thing, we're going to go through 3. The first thing I feel so strongly about is that we must take a sanity first approach. Does anyone think they know what I mean when I talk about a sanity first approach? So simple. This is about how we rethink our self-care, because this is table stakes. We have all read every article on the internet about working moms and burnout. I will not rehash the statistics for you. And no matter how many articles we read, no matter how many times they pop around those group texts, the parents channel on Slack or on Teams, when I talk to my friends, when I talk to my clients, when I sometimes am even having a bad day, I can fall into this trap of believing that self-care is an indulgence, that it is a nice to have. And that is a myth, because in any other area in our life, we would just call this science. It is purely physics. The race car cannot drive 200 miles an hour around the track if it is out of gas. That is not my opinion. That is physics. And I want you to think about a sanity first approach, because I want you cruising to your goals, not waiting on the side of the road for AAA roadside assistance. I blew out a tire a few weeks ago, and the call time was 2.5 hours. I'm sorry, we are all too busy to be waiting for AAA roadside assistance when it comes to our goals. And in this idea of keeping it small, I want to share with you, there is research from Harvard that just 30 to 60 seconds of self-care, what they call micro moments of self-care, can have a measurable macro impact on 3 KPIs, which is how productive we are at work, how positively other people view our contributions, and our own self-satisfaction. So people who practice 30 to 60-second increments of self-care actually do more work, have their work better recognized, and feel better about the work that they do. We all have 30 to 60 seconds. The second thing, and we did this with Jackie, we did this with Brianna, was this idea of think big, act small, and getting crystal clear on our yes and no decisions, right? Really thinking about what it is that you want to say yes to and what it is you want to say no to. So I run a group called On Purpose. It is a cohort for women who want to think about how they live and lead on purpose in their work lives. I know we have at least one person here tonight who's going to be a part of our 22 cohort, and I am so excited about that. Last year, in our 2021 cohort, we were having a conversation about goals. And a woman shared that one of her personal goals was that she wanted to get back to running. But with 3 kids and a pandemic and virtual school, and oh, by the way, she worked for a social justice nonprofit, so she's probably doing some of the most important work that there is. She just could not carve the time out for her yeses and nos. And Brittany knows this. We know this person, and this is a real story. And so that night and On Purpose, we asked her, what is the smallest thing you can say yes to and the smallest thing that you can say no to? This was April of last year. She said, I'm going to say yes tomorrow to setting my alarm 45 minutes earlier, even though I'm going to be really tired. And I'm going to say no to hitting snooze. I'm going to ask my partner to literally kick me when the alarm goes off so that I actually do get out of bed. So she did it. She reported back. She went on a run. The program ended. And I got an email from her in October that she had run a marathon. 1 yes, 1 no. This is not a made-up story. This is a real person, a real busy working mom of 3. 1 yes and 1 no at a time. So thank you, Jackie. And thank you, Brianna, for being brave enough to workshop your yeses and nos with us. And for those of you that are joining, I'm curious, about your marathon. And I'd love to hear from you. You don't have to tell us what the goal is. Maybe just throw me in the chat. What is one thing you're saying yes to and one thing you are saying no to tonight as you leave from here? One thing you're saying yes to and one thing that you are saying no to. You don't have to give me context. You don't have to give me a story. It can be yes to setting my alarm. It could be no to laundry. It could be yes to that conversation with my boss. It could be no to checking my email when I'm on vacation tomorrow. 1 yes or 1 no. One yes or 1 no. Yes to time boxing my work after kids' bedtime and to do only 2 remaining items. No to going to bed without self-care in the form of a show to decompress. I feel that I'm binging Grey's Anatomy, and it is great. We got yes to spending some time in the next few days for self-care, saying no to TV 1 time a week so that I can read more. I love that goal. No to further procrastination. We have a great article on whether you're procrastinating your productivity. Brittany, I know we're going to send some articles. Maybe we can grab that one and send it in the email to everyone as well. Shelly said yes to yoga twice a week, yes to allowing 80% for tomorrow, no to checking my email after I sign off to go to be with my family, yes to reading before I go to sleep instead of being on my phone. These are awesome yeses and nos. Awesome yeses and nos. And I want to hear from you on how it's going. The final thing that I want to talk about when we think about making the moves that matter, as you think about designing your yes and your no's, whether it's self-care, whether it's leadership, whatever those goals are, is thinking about your goals as a contact sport and refocusing on your network and your relationships. Honest moment, I want to hear from you on the chat. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's the best networking I've ever done, 1 being I don't remember what networking is. How great has your networking been during this pandemic on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is I've never been more of a networking maven as a pandemic working parent. 1 is this is totally in the gutter. Lots of 2s. Lots of 2s. And I want to talk about this because new research from Harvard shows us that one of the reasons that women are actually falling behind in the leadership gap, besides all of the systemic macro factors that we know, is that new research shows that women are more likely to think about networking as an extracurricular, even though research shows we're better at it. We're better at relationship building. Whereas research shows our male counterparts see this as more of a core competency of their jobs. And so as you think about your goals as a contact sport, I want to remind you that your network has the insights and the advice and the ideas that are going to move you forward in ideating on your goals and taking them to fruition, right? That's why instead of over polishing, I want to encourage you to think about where in your network you can share with people the recipe that you're working on, getting their feedback. Because while we think of contact sport like this, I personally think of this as more like the networking contact sport that I want to be a part of. This is about pursuing your goals on your terms. And so I want to challenge you as you leave here today, for those of you who are 2, who want to go to a 3, for those of you, someone says, I've been a 7 because I was job searching, that's great. I want you to think about where you can get a little stretchier in your networking. And it's not just looking for a new job, it's the kind of networking that Brianna talked about, where it's using her internal network to think about how she's going to move her leadership goals forward, or the type of networking that Jackie talked about, how she's going to think about how she can build relationships in her team to be more collaborative and move her strategy goals forward. And so whether it's upping your networking to once a week, to once a month, I'll take that, to just commenting more on LinkedIn, right? Because LinkedIn, I think, is just the world's lowest hanging fruit when it comes to networking. I would love to hear from you. Who is one person who you are going to commit to? You can give us initials, or you can give us a moniker like Brianna gave us Amazing Boss Stephanie. Who is the one person in your network who you, looking at this goal sheet that you designed, you feel like, person X could really help me with something on this list? Would love to hear from you. This is the final thing I'm going to ask from you in the chat, because I want to give you the tools to walk away here tonight with momentum and action items on your goals. Who is one person in your network that you can send a LinkedIn message to, that you could have a virtual coffee with, that you could just send an email saying gosh, you know what? It's been 2 years of pandemic crazy. I realize I haven't connected with you. I was just thinking of you and wanted to hear how it's going. Who is one person who could connect you with your goals that you would be willing to reach out to? Again, a lot of my old boss, those are coming up a lot. We welcome any others. Think about this. I want to thank you so much for coming here tonight. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about a few ways that we can close up here and stay in touch. And then for those of you who showed up live, we're going to turn the record off so that if you had a question you wanted to ask me off the record, because we often get a lot of off the record questions that people don't want to put on the record, we're going to hang out for a few minutes. So I just want to thank you for coming again tonight, and to share a few other opportunities for us to keep this work going together. The first, Jackie, to you and all the over polishers out there, we're having our Quieting Our Inner Critic workshop on February 16th. If you've ever told yourself a story about I'm really hard on myself, but it's what makes me so successful, please join us for this conversation. This is one of our most requested corporate workshops. We do it once a year for free for the Something Major community. Come, bring a girlfriend. The second is we're going to be sitting down on February 23rd with Meredith Feynman, who wrote the book Brag Better, about how we can own our message, be loud, proud, and strategic about what our accomplishments are. So please join us for that on February 23rd, also totally free. 2 other things I want to put on your radar. Our On Purpose Women's Cohort Program kicks off on February 28th. Which is a Monday, not a Friday. And this is for women who want to really live and lead on purpose and build community with an intimate cohort of other women who are looking to do the same. We have 2 spots left. If you're interested in learning more about hearing how work can sponsor you, drop me a note. And then finally, I am so excited. This is a save the date. On May 6th, we're going to be back at the Four Seasons in Georgetown for our Realign and Recharge Women's Leadership Retreat. We did 2 of these last year. They sold out. We had people come in from something like 7 different states. And whether you're a local Washingtonian or you're from out of town and you're interested, just drop us a note and we'll be sure to share more information when we have that. Most importantly, screenshot this. I want you to keep in touch with me. Brittany's going to throw some links in the chat about how you can keep in touch with me. I love hearing about how this went for you. So whether you want to share a yes or a no, whether you have a question you want to ask in front of the group, whether you want to let me know 7 months from now how it all shook out, I love keeping in touch with you all. We have tons of free content on our website on demand. We're going to send some articles to you. And those of you who are connected with me on LinkedIn know I'm a prolific LinkedIn poster. So feel free to add me if we're not already there. With that, I want to bid adieu to the folks who joined us on the record or the folks who want to jump off and get going on their goals or their evening. And so we're going to turn off the record now.